So it's been a few years since I made a video talking about my backpacking gear. And since my last video, I've made quite a bit of changes, gotten new gear, tried a few new things. So I thought it'd be good to make a new up-to-date video. Now, this time I decided to just completely unload everything that I put in my backpack. So hopefully I didn't miss anything at all. But before I get into the gear, I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about my personal backpacking philosophy. I've been backpacking for a long time now, for decades, and I started off with extremely heavy pack, like 50 pounds. And I ended up at one point being super ultralight with a 15-pound pack. And that was for a week-long trip with food and water, counted in that weight. And I know after talking with many people who don't ultralight, one of the things that they often bring up that kind of turns them off to it is they feel that it's mostly about going without, doing without this amenity or that amenity, and they just look at it like you're giving up a lot of comforts and it's not generally worth taking it to that extent. And the reality is that to some extent I actually agree with that. But on the other hand, I do think there's a great amount of value in trying to save as much weight as possible, even if it sounds a little bit silly sometimes. So basically what I do is I shave weight in every absolute possible way I can, in ways where I don't really pay a heavy cost for doing that. And by cost, I mean to my comfort, and enjoyment of the trip. But then there's a point where weight is worth it if the comforts bring you much more joy to your trip. And so it's kind of this balancing act, and some of it you only kind of learn by your own experience. I think that one thing that's good to keep in mind is if you've been bringing an item along and you find you don't enjoy it, or you don't really need it, you don't really use it, maybe you can do without that. But what's awesome about backpacking these days is it's almost like a golden age of stuff. All the cool equipment that's available now allows you to have extremely lightweight gear, but without really sacrificing comfort. And that's why I wanted to kind of show you some of my gear and maybe give you some ideas of what's available and things that you can do to save weight. Now, as I always like to start off, the best way to save weight when you're backpacking is with your big three items: your backpack, your sleeping system, and your tent. And so to start off, your backpack is one that a lot of people don't think about as being something that's really adding a bunch of weight to your pack. But if you go to the store and buy like a Osprey with a nice fancy support system and internal frame, those can be like 5 or more pounds, and that's a lot of weight. Meanwhile, these days you can buy a lot of really nice ultralight packs. So the one that I've gotten recently is the Durstin Wapsa 30. They make larger packs than this, but I really like a lightweight 30 to 40 liter pack because I feel that's about how much I'm going to bring, even if it's a 7 or 8 day trip, and it's going to hold everything I need, but it's going to be really light. Now, one thing that I really appreciate about this pack is it still has the waist strap, even though it's an ultralight pack, and it even has really generous pouches, so you can put like your snack food in here, your cell phone, or whatever else you want to put in there. And also on the bottom it has this little pouch where you can reach in and grab stuff on the fly. And it holds probably more like 36 to 40 liters, because I don't think they count the outside pouch and such. This front pouch here, let me see if you can get that in shot. This holds quite a bit. I absolutely love this pack, and it's made of the new Alula fabric, which just came out, and it's waterproof. So that's another huge plus. I don't have to deal with getting a backpack cover and having that on. You know, it's not going to get wet. And you know, nothing inside is going to get wet. So I absolutely cannot recommend these Durston bags enough. And it's about $300, but that's actually pretty cheap for these Alula packs with all the features that it has. I would say it's probably the best of this class of backpacks. Now the next one, where you can save a ton of weight, is your tent. Now this is the same tent I've had for many years. This is the Z-Packs Duplex. One of the best ultralight tents you can buy, but man, are they pricey anymore to buy these. There's other options by other companies, and you can maybe do the research to see what you like. This is Dyneema fabric, and it uses, you know, use trekking poles to put it up. Another thing that I like to do is I get these nice carbon fiber stakes from Z-Packs. Just for, they're really strong and they're ultra light. There's other tent pin options out there, but I find that a lot of the ultralight ones are so narrow that they don't really do a good job as a tent stake. I know a company just came out with like one tent stakes that are really like a gram though. So if you really want to save weight even more than this, there's other options out there. But you know, tents can get a little expensive, but it's one of the best ways to spend your money, to make sure that you have one that has plenty of space, that you're not going to hit your head on the sides or the top, because in the morning that's going to get you soaked from all the moisture, and that it's waterproof so that you can do fine in any storms that you might get caught in. And then the sleeping system. So this is a Z-Packs quilt, down quilt. This is, I think it's like 950 fill down. I would recommend that you go, if you can afford it, for a down sleeping bag. They really, really are worth it for the weight and the warmth that you get out of them. Just make sure when you get a sleeping bag that you go, especially if you're a woman, that you want to go by the comfort rating of the sleeping bag for how warm it sleeps. So if it's rated like say a 32 degree bag with a 20 degree comfort rating, the 20 degrees is where you want to consider, well, excuse me, I kind of flipped that around. Say it's a 20 degree bag with a 32 degree comfort rating. You want to consider that it's a 32 degree bag for you. Now men sleep a little warmer, so you can often kind of go off the other rating as well. But one thing that you will hear people say about sleeping bags that's not really true is that down doesn't insulate if it gets wet, and that's just simply not true. You can literally find YouTube videos of somebody soaking his down sleeping bag and he still sleeps warm in it. So I've never had problems with it. The fabric is also kind of water resistant, so you know, like the worst that'll happen to me is the feet will kind of rub against your tent wall and get wet at night, but it's never been a problem for me. But if you do want to save some money, there are some synthetic options out there that are going to be a bit cheaper, because sleeping bags, especially the really high fill down ones, can get really expensive. And so maybe try to look for a sale, you know, get 50% off on some discontinued sleeping bag, or like keep your eye for bargains, and that's how I would recommend doing it. The other thing is, I mentioned I have a quilt. So what a quilt is, and I can't recommend these enough either for backpacking, is it doesn't have a mummy portion for your head, and it doesn't have a bottom, so you're not sleeping on top of the sleeping bag. It's kind of like a blanket that wraps around you, and then your feet go inside the bottom. And so the reason for that is because when you have a normal sleeping bag, any of the down that you're sleeping on top of gets compressed, and it does nothing to warm you. So it's just wasted weight. So that's the idea behind a quilt, is it wraps around you, and then your sleeping pad is what you're actually sleeping on, and that does most of the heavy lifting for you, for keeping you warm on you know, whatever's touching the ground. And so sleeping quilts work really good, but if you do find that your head is getting cold, like say you're really cold weather, then what I'd recommend is bringing up like a wool cap or something. You know, I don't always bring this with me unless I'm doing really cold weather camping. I have to be like well below freezing before I feel I need this. But if you're a cold sleeper, you definitely might want to consider bringing up a cap if you're using a sleeping quilt. Or even if you're bringing a mummy bag, it doesn't hurt to have that extra warmth if you're a cold sleeper. Now, the other important part, and this is something that is hard for me to make a recommendation on for you exactly, but your sleeping pad is also very, very, very important for saving weight, but also being warm. And these all have what are called R factors. And the higher the R factor, the warmer it is. But most of the sleeping pads that you get these days are going to be rated at 3 season or all season. So you're usually fine when it comes to the warmth of your pad, unless you're sleeping in winter. You're hiking in winter. So then you want to make sure yours is an all season bag or pad. Now, what I like to do is I actually like to buy several pads at once from somewhere that has a good return policy, and I actually test them. And so what I personally did, because I'm really crazy about this, is I bought 11 different sleeping pads and I tested all of them for a month. And the one that I decided on that I like the most of all is the Nemo Eclipse. I think it just came out this year. It's a 4-inch thick pad. And boy, do I love this pad. It's lightweight, it's not very noisy, it's warm, and most importantly, it's comfortable. You know, when I started out backpacking, I slept on the ground with no pad. That was in my late teens, early 20s. And then I ended up getting one of those, accordion foam pads. And then when I got to like my later 20s, I got one of those Thermarest, hybrid foam pads they used to have. I think mine was like 3/4 inch thick. But man, when the Thermarest came up with their Neo Air, man, that was nice. That was the first time you could have an air mattress that was warm. But then I got to the point where the Thermarest just wasn't doing it for me anymore. So at the time, I got the Sea to Summit Comfort Plus, which was the comfiest pad there was at the time. But man, over the years, even that hasn't been doing it for me anymore. And I wake up with a lot of lower back pain. And so I tested out a lot of pads. And I was surprised by how some of them didn't sleep as well as I thought they would. Probably the most disappointing for me was the hybrid foam pads. So I tried the Nemo Flyer Cloud, the Sea to Summit Pursuit Plus, and the Thermarest Trail Pro. And I thought those were going to be the most comfortable of all the pads I got because they're partial foam. But man, I could not sleep well on any of those three. I'd wake up with lower back pain every single night. Sometimes I'd wake up, I'd start feeling pain after like as quickly as 30 minutes. So I didn't like those. I tried the Big Agnes Repeat SL. I tried the Xped Megamat, the Ultra, I think it is. I tried the Nemo Tensor. I tried the Sea to Summit Etherlight XR. I tried the Zen Bivy Flex Air, the Neo Air, the Thermarest Neoloft. And man, the Neoloft I had a lot of high expectations for, but I don't like those horizontal baffles, and I felt it felt like I was sleeping on a balloon. I did not like it at all. It's the same reason I didn't like the Nemo Tensor, which was also those sideways baffles. My two favorite in the end ended up being the Zen Bivy Flex Air and the Nemo Eclipse. And they both slept very, very well, but I think I like the Nemo slightly more, and it's lighter and cheaper. I also slept very well on the Sea to Summit Etherlight XR. that was really nice. I just like the Nemo better. I think it's probably the best pad that's out right now. And it's also really warm and it's really cheap. But yeah, it's kind of hard to decide which pad is best for you. But I would say that the most important thing when you think, when you're selecting a pad, in my opinion, comfort trumps everything. I don't care if you have to carry, I don't know, 4 pounds worth of pad to sleep comfortably. You want to do whatever it takes to sleep well at night, because that's going to help you recuperate any energy you used carrying that extra weight. So your sleeping pad, and also making sure your sleeping bag or quilt is warm enough are worth whatever weight it takes. You don't want to try to shave weight there. And that can differ from person to person. Oh yeah, that was another thing out the Nemo Eclipse, is some of the pads would give me like a, numb shoulder. Not the Nemo Eclipse. It was great. But I want to show you what's probably my favorite discovery that I've made recently. And this is the Zenbivy pillow. Now this pillow is so comfortable that I literally think it's more comfortable than what I use in my bed. But it's basically an air bladder, and then, see if I can pull this out. And then it has a feather pad on top. So you get this really nice loft, but you can adjust the bladder to whatever height you want. So what I'd recommend is, if you do decide to get one of these, this is the large one with the extra loft, is have somebody watch you lay on it and have them help you get your inflation levels right, so that your neck is perfectly straight with your body when you're laying down. And then kind of note at about where that inflation amount is, so that every time you go to inflate this, you know where to bring it to. Another thing that I like to do is, one of the items I bring up with me is a down jacket. This is the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisper. There are nicer offerings these days for down jackets, but I'm not ready to jump on that yet. This is still a really good jacket, and I think it's very warm for how light it is. I think it's about 8 ounces. But you can get a little more premium these days because of more competition that there is. In fact, I think the Z-Pax one is the most enticing for me when it comes to warmth to weight ratio. But as I was getting at, I stick this into the pillow as well, underneath the lofting sack or whatever you call it, and that gives me even more comfort that way. And I'm already bringing this anyway, so I might as well use it. But yeah, having a good pillow, I'm really picky with my pillows. I tried air bladder pillows. What I used to do is I'd use a stuff sack, and I just put a down jacket in it and maybe some extra clothes or whatever other padding I might have to get it to the right height and feel. But I would wake up with like a numb ear because the down would just compress in the jacket too much. And I just decided, you know what, I need to get a real pillow again. I think it's my Thermarest. I showed it in my last video. I don't have it anymore. I gave it to somebody. But they make a nice pillow too when it comes to loftiness. But I would say the Zenbivy is much nicer than that one. So definitely check that out. There's a few other good pillow offerings out there too if you want to be a little more lightweight, because that Zenbivy is a little bit on the heavier side. But they do make it in smaller offerings too. So one other new little contraption, couple new contraptions I got, is depending on your tent floor, one of the problems you'll run into a lot, especially if you're on a slight slope, is that your sleeping bag will kind of slide throughout the night. And they make like silicone stuff you can put on the bottom of your pad, either like a tape or like a paste. But that doesn't work on every type of floor. If you're using Dyneema, for example, like the Z-Pax duplex tent, that's not going to work. So what I did, and I haven't installed them yet, I just bought them, is these little strap things that you can install in your Z-Packs tent, that'll then strap your pad and hold it in place. This is sold by Z-Packs, so you can find it on their webpage. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to next trip. Another thing I got is this nifty new toy by Alpenblow, and this is a sleeping pad little pump. Now there's a lot of different pump offerings out there, and this one comes with all the different little attachments depending on what brand your pad is, but this is what I would be bringing. This weighs 0.3 ounces. 0.3 ounces. Now you can't trust all of the pumps when you look up their weight, because a lot of them aren't including the battery weight. But I'm already bringing a battery because either I'm going to bring, and we'll get to that, but either I'm bringing an actual battery or I'm bringing my cell phone, and it works off of either one. But what's really nice about this one is that it's super quiet. So let me show you, in fact, so that you can get an idea. Now, there we go. I don't even know if you can hear that. Super quiet. Most of these that you buy for airing up your sleeping pads are crazy loud. Now the one drawback, and you'll see this in some of the reviews, is it'll take about 3 to 5 minutes to fill up a big pad. But it also won't 100% inflate it. So like with my Nemo clips, for example, I have to put 2 breaths in after I run this, which to me is nothing. It's totally worth it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. But you can get ones that are faster and fill them up, more, that are going to be a little heavier and a little louder. But the other thing you can do is all the new pads come with inflation sacks. And so those are these. This is the Nemo variant. And basically you attach the sack to your sleeping pad. They'll have a little attachment point. And then you just do a breath into this. And then you just roll it, and it'll push the air in, and you can use one of these to inflate it. But this actually weighs, I think, a couple ounces, versus that Alpenblow is 0.3 ounces. So that's amazing. By the way, here's the bag for the Nemo. So it blows up to, I already had it open, but it compresses down to about that much. It's not very large. And this has the little pouch in it for the patch in case you need to, patch your pad. You should always bring one of those just in case. So that's my sleeping system. Hopefully that gave you a few ideas. Now, with my sleeping quilt, obviously I don't bring it like that. I compress it. I have a Dynamo sack that I shove it into when I'm actually backpacking. But with anything that's down, you always want to make sure it's not in a compressed state when you store it, so that it doesn't have issues lofting in the future. So, I'll shove that in that little pack. So let's see, moving on, let's go over clothing. Now, I'm wearing what I will bring on a backpacking trip. This is actually one of my pairs of backpacking clothes. And so, I have some synthetic cargo pants. These are the kind that you can unzip and turn into shorts. And then I have a pair of merino wool socks. And then I have a pair of merino wool sock liners. Then I have this overshirt which has a breathing vent on the back. And then I have an undershirt that has some breathing vents under the armpits. And these are both synthetic. You can wear wool or synthetic as your clothes, but I wouldn't recommend anything else because, as the saying goes, cotton kills. When cotton gets wet, it takes a long time to dry and it doesn't insulate. Whereas wool will continue to insulate and synthetic materials will dry really fast. That's why I like synthetic shirts, because when I wash them, I'll often put them on when they're still wet, and so they'll dry more quickly. But one mistake that a lot of people make when they go backpacking is they bring up too many clothes. So what I recommend is you at most bring one spare change of clothes. And I don't even do that. And this is even for a week-long trip. In fact, even if I was doing a through hike, I would still at most bring one change of clothes. But all that I bring is an extra pair of socks, an extra pair of underwear, and an extra pair of sock liners. Now, that may sound crazy to some people, but what you're doing when you're backpacking is every day you wash the previous day's clothing and you let it dry as you're wearing the stuff that you washed the day before. And so by the time the next day rolls around, the stuff you washed the day before is dry, and you go through this cycle. Now, when it comes to my pants and my shirt, I can just take those off and wash them and then put them back on is what I usually do. If you're a woman, you may want to consider bringing a full extra change of clothes though, because you're often not going to have privacy these days to wash like you might want. Or what you can do is bring a bathing suit and then wash them while you wear the bathing suit, and that can save you a lot of weight. Now, I used to use Right socks, which are a great sock, and they're still fantastic, and they come with a sock liner inside. But I really love these new merino wool sock liners from REI. They're so soft and nice. But to kind of explain the point of having these sock liners is they help you with not getting blisters, and they help you, with just not having your feet as wet. They used to call these wicking socks. We used to call them wicking socks because they'd wick the water away from your feet. But the other thing that they're doing is they're causing a barrier between your skin and your sock. So your outer sock is going to rub on the liner instead of rubbing on your bare skin. And this really together helps you not get blisters. I haven't gotten a blister backpacking in many, many years because of this. Even when I've hiked with wet feet. On one trip, I hiked for almost 5 days with soaking wet feet because it was just raining the whole time. And I didn't get any blisters with these on. So I love them. Right socks are fantastic too. I like those liners, and I like how much easier they are to clean than the Right socks are. But the Right socks are much more convenient, so you can't really go wrong with those. Another thing is if you want a belt, I would recommend you get one of these lightweight webbing belts. The kind that just plastic snaps, and then you got a little squeeze here to take them apart. You'll often see these come with a lot of the backpacking pants, so you don't even have to worry about it. But this is a really ultralight belt that you can use, and you definitely don't want to go without a belt, even if you don't think you need one. Another item of clothing you see that I have on is my bandana. I like to wear them John Wayne style, just because I like the neck coverage that you get for sun protection. But what a lot of people do these days is they get these wool hoodies that they'll wear, and they'll actually be long sleeve with a hood, and those are great too if that's your thing, for keeping the sun off of you and helping against bugs and such. Fantastic new stuff, but it's just not my thing. In fact, you'll notice my hat, I bring this. Admittedly, it's a bit of a splurge item, one of my biggest splurge items, but for me it's just tradition. I'm not going to break that tradition. But you can bring a cap. You want to get really crazy with the weight, you can even bring a golf cap. But another thing that I sometimes bring is a knee brace. I'm not getting any younger, and I'll sometimes have knee problems, so I'll wear a knee brace or two these days. This is a Chopat. There's many different kinds. This is just like a double banded on the front, one above the knee, one below. Pretty simple. And then shoes are another change I've made. So this is going to be different for everybody. So when you're buying shoes, you have to go in person and try them on. Don't buy them online, because everybody's feet are different. Now for me, I used Tiva Rivas for years. In fact, I'd buy like 3 pairs at a time to last me for many years. But then these new companies came around that started making wide toe box shoes, which I love. And so these are Topos. There's some other brands out there too that are really fantastic. In fact, one of the new things is to have, I'm sorry, my brain is drawing a blank what it's called, but where it's like totally flat-footed. There's no slope in the shoe. And they say that can be better for your knees. But I don't know if that's true for everyone. I definitely, if you're going to get, I think they're Ultras, for example, I think they're called, that make those, and maybe Topo makes some, I'm not sure, and I think some other companies do. But make sure that you try them out first, because for some people it's not good, but for some people it's fantastic. Another thing that I've kind of abandoned is wanting waterproof shoes. You know, I had enough instances over the years where I'd be in shallow water and get my feet wet that I kind of was sold on waterproof. But the reality is now I'm starting to realize that most of the times my feet get wet, it's because I'm going through wet brush and the water goes down my leg into my shoes anyways. And the nice thing about having not waterproof shoes is they breathe way better and they dry way faster, and they're usually going to be lighter. And so I'd recommend, if you're looking at shoes, to look at trail runners, maybe even just running shoes, because the lightweight value you get out of these is so nice, because every step you take, you're lifting that weight. So it's one of the best places to save weight if you can. But definitely try them out. If you ever get ones with wide toe boxes, you have to make sure that it's really supported in the center, or the wide toe box works against you, because you don't want your foot to actually move. So that holds your foot in place. And sorry, I can go on and on and on about shoes, so I'll try not to geek out about them too much. Another thing, make sure they have good like Vibram soles, and soles that don't look like they're gonna wear out really quickly. And make sure you test them out before going on like some big long trip, and make sure you buy them from somewhere where you can return them if you're not happy. REI is a fantastic place for that, by the way. Moving on, so I mentioned the bandana. The bandana is great for using as like a dual purpose thing. You can use it for a towel as well. But you can also bring up like a camp towel. This is by Pack Towel is the name of the company. And they make these in different sizes. I don't bring one of these up. I just use my bandana. But I wanted to show you this, that they do exist, and they are kind of nice if you want a specific towel. Another thing that I'll usually bring is some bandage, just in case you need it. You need to wrap a knee or an ankle, or somebody else's knee or ankle. First aid kit. I find that the most important thing in your first aid kit is actually the drugs. Vitamin I, also known as ibuprofen, Benadryl. I like to bring magnesium. Even if you don't think you need them, somebody else might. Also, maybe some other types of painkillers for people that other types of painkillers don't work on. I also like to bring up duct tape, a small roll of duct tape, which can work really well for first aid as well. Also, I need to buy some actually, but I often like to bring up a mini container super glue also, just in case. Also, don't forget, if you have any medication, you need to make sure you bring up all of that. In fact, let's move on a little bit to my toiletry items and essential items. Another thing that I've changed is, usually I'll bring toilet paper, and I'll just take like a roll of normal toilet paper and just pull some off by hand and put it in a Ziploc bag. But the newest discovery I've made, and these have probably been around for a little while, but I just didn't know about them, are these little towel coins. And they're little mini coin looking things that you just wet, and they become like wet wipes. And so that's actually what I mostly use anymore is those, because it's a wet wipe that you can bring with you. And I already wet one. This is about how big they are. You know, pretty nice size. And this is dry already, but you know, it's nice to have a wipe that's wet. And so these are what I tend to bring these days for that. Soap. Make sure you bring biodegradable soap. Normally I'd have this in a smaller container, which I'll be getting. My brother accidentally took mine, so I need to replace it. But I like to put this in a smaller container. This is Dr. Bonner's. You can get camp suds, anything that's biodegradable. The other thing is insect repellent. Even if you don't think you need it, always bring it. You never know. I like 100% DEET. I like to buy the Coleman 100% DEET because I think it's a great size. Sometimes I won't use much. Sometimes I'll use a whole bunch. What I do is I spray it on my hand first and then I rub it. 100% DEET doesn't actually like do more than lower amounts of DEET. Anything over 30% DEET doesn't like repel mosquitoes better. It just it makes it so that a little goes a long way. So having the 100% DEET, you know, you don't have to bring as much volume of DEET. But for people that don't like DEET, there's a newer option out there called picaridin. This is by Sawyer. I think this is the smallest one I've been able to find. But this stuff works almost as long as DEET does. I think they say DEET is like 8 hours, and this is like 7 hours that it lasts. This also has a nicer scent. In fact, it's kind of scentless for the most part. But again, that's picaridin. In fact, while we're on the topic of insect repellent, one mistake that a lot of people make is thinking that this is enough. And it's usually not. I would recommend you add one more layer to your insect repellent, and that is with what's called picaridin. Now here, let me grab some so you can, or not, I'm sorry, not picaridin, permethrin it's called. Now Sawyer is probably the one you most commonly see, and it'll come in like a yellow spray bottle, or it'll come in like an aerosol bottle. You can find these in most outdoor supply stores. And what you do is you spray the outside of your clothing before your trip, and that dries, and it creates a layer that they say lasts for about 6 washes of the clothes. And what that does is it prevents the mosquitoes from biting through your clothing. And it also, if ticks climb on you or chiggers, it'll paralyze them and they'll fall off you. So, you know, it also protects against ticks. In fact, if you live in tick country, this is the best thing you can do, even, you know, just for everyday life. Now, what I do nowadays is I get this really big stuff. Insect Guard is what this stuff is. And it just lasts me a lot longer, and I can treat a lot more clothing. I got a lot of ticks out here where I live too, so I like to use that for my day-to-day life. But yeah, if you put DEET or picaridin along with permethrin on your clothing, you are going to be smooth sailing when it comes to mosquitoes. Another item is a poncho, a rain poncho. This is just a plastic poncho. I've found that I don't really like rain jackets or rain gear. They just tend to not work very well. Like you get the Gore-Tex, for example, and Gore-Tex kind of sucks, to be honest, because when it gets wet, it stops breathing. All the pores get clogged, and then you get wet from all your sweat. So like, I prefer a poncho because it can breathe from below. They make some rain jackets where they can breathe, but they can also get you wet. And so, again, ponchos are what I've kind of landed on as being the best option for when it rains. And so there's that. Oh, by the way, I don't think I showed you this. I think like Coleman and other brands make those little white coins, but this one is called Easy Towel that I bought, if you just want to know the brand of that. I'm just kind of moving along through all my stuff here. So then we got sunscreen. I usually just buy the Banana Boat SPF 30. But what I do is I have these little sunscreen sample bottles I got way back in the day from like a dermatologist, and I just squeeze this into this. So this will last me for a whole week-long trip easily, but I don't have to bring up the whole bottle. And I do the same thing with my toothpaste. I have a mostly empty travel toothpaste bottle, and I just backfill it with a bigger bottle of toothpaste, and so that I don't have to bring in a whole new full travel toothpaste. I save a lot of weight because this is going to be plenty for even a long backpacking trip, and I don't need to bring up a huge amount of toothpaste I'm just not using. Another one is chapstick. This brand I found is called Chap Ice. You can find it online, or you can find it in like Walgreens, I believe. But they're little mini chapsticks, and man, this stuff works really well. I compared a lot of different chapstick brands, like how long they last, and this one worked really well. I was really pleased with it. Now this right here is a trick I've been doing for many years. This is not chapstick, but it's an old chapstick bottle that was empty, and I just shove antiperspirant inside of it, and I use it as antiperspirant instead of chapstick, so under my armpits and anywhere else I might need it. I can't recommend antiperspirant enough. Make sure that if you get antiperspirant, it's the kind that says it has like 24 or 48 hour protection. If you get that kind, you are not going to smell at all on your backpacking trip if you apply it after every time you bathe, and maybe apply it every morning for good measure. And that's going to stop you from smelling. I can be on the trail for 2 weeks and I will not smell at all because I use this. So keep that in mind. Very good trick. I also have made a new discovery when it comes to toothbrush. This little guy here is called the trail brush. And what it does is it actually snaps onto your spoon, and it turns your spoon into a toothbrush. And so that's, to me, super amazing. But if you don't like the idea of that, you can also get like a bamboo toothbrush. A whole bunch of different people make these. And if you want to get really crazy with the bamboo brush, you can drill holes in it, sand it thinner, cut it shorter, whatever you want to do to save some weight. Why not? Do you really need a toothbrush that's super long or super heavy duty? Not really. And you can get that down to super light as well. But for me, you can't beat this guy who weighs almost nothing. By the way, this is my spoon. This is just an aluminum spoon. They come in titanium as well. And you want them to be long-necked so they can fit into your food pouches. If you want to get really cheap, though, you can get a Dairy Queen long-necked spoon. But I have had one of those break on me before, so be aware. So another thing that I've started using that I used to use was trekking poles. For the longest time, I just didn't care for them. I just didn't like them. But I started using them, and I'm a convert. I have converted, and I would recommend that anybody who doesn't use trekking poles, please use trekking poles. They're worth it. They do two different things that I've noticed. The most important thing that they do is when you are especially going downhill, they take a lot of the strain off your knees. I've heard it said they can take up to 20% of the strain off your knees. Now these ones right here are Lecky Makalu carbon poles. They are the foldable kind, so they fold up like so. But these are also the kind that are adjustable, so you can adjust the height. Some of these foldable ones are one size, but unfortunately my tent and my walking height are two different heights, so I need to be able to adjust them. And I picked the Lecky Makalu specifically because they're the only ones I could find that have their adjustment range works for both my tent and for my normal walking height. A lot of the offerings were 5 millimeters off. So I really like these. I said they do two things for you. So they take the strain off your knees. The other thing that they do is they help distribute the load. You use your arms with these to give you a little bit of a boost. You're actually using the strength of your arm muscles to propel you a little bit, taking a little bit of the strain off other parts of your body. The reality of that is it actually makes your body use more calories, which is fine, because what it does that's so amazing is it takes a lot of muscles that would normally be more highly strained and kind of shares the load. So, your arms might get a little tired, but your legs are less tired because of it. And so definitely use these. They're worth it. And a lot of the tents these days that are ultralight need trekking poles anyway. So, hey, bring them. Another item is my A-Light Monarch chair. This is kind of old school. This is like their first generation one. A-Light went out of business, but you can still get these. They're bought by a company called Grand Trunk. Grand Trunk. And it's called the Monarch chair. It's odd because it's two-legged. There's other offerings out there that are four-legged that are also ultralight. But I actually prefer the two-legged because the two-legged chair allows you to sit on a slope and it not be a problem because you just put your back to the incline. I also like how you can kind of rock in it. But there's one that's just literally 1 ounce heavier than this that is four-legged if you need that. And there's other options out there too. I think a new, I forget who makes it, but somebody just came out with another lightweight four-legged option this year as well. But I love that chair so much, I actually take it camping when I go regular car camping. I love it that much. So another new thing I got, I used to use for many years the Sawyer Mini, and man, it kind of sucks compared to what you can get nowadays. So what I have gotten now is the Platypus Quick Draw. And this sucker is so much faster than the Sawyer was. And it just connects to a water bottle or a pouch, and then you squeeze it, into your container. And so you have to back flush this. Usually I'll do it at the end of a trip. And that's what this little guy is for, is you hook up a bottle to it and you can back flush it. Other offerings have different methods of back flushing, but all of them generally need that. The other thing I got is, these are pretty popular these days, is the Ceenoc Outdoors pouch for the water. So you use this for your unfiltered water. And what this guy is good for is, he's good for filling up with water in places where the water is really shallow and would be normally hard to fill up from. But I actually got it because I've had like 3 different pouches rupture on me in the past. So I'm just sick of pouches failing on me. So this one seemed like the most well built. But just a tip, if you are using a pouch of any kind for these, you want to roll the pouch. Don't squeeze the pouch, because squeezing it puts a lot more strain on it. Roll it from the top down, and that's going to make it last a lot longer. But I don't know if this will ever fail either way. This is pretty well built. It is a slight bit heavier because of that. The next lightest pouch that I'd recommend after this is the one that the actual Quick Draw can come with. That is by Platypus. They actually do sell it on their website as a standalone pouch as well. But those are your offerings. Definitely don't use the Sawyer one though. That thing's junk. Also, for fire, Bic Mini. Don't use anything else. Get a Bic Mini and be done. These are tried and true. Sometimes you can hold them up to the light and see how much fluid is left in them. If you have a white one, it's really easy to tell. Somebody's told me you can actually tear the jacket off though and see it more easily though. I haven't really messed with that before though. But it is really nice if you know how much is left in it. But what you can also do is just weigh it before and after to kind of know how much. But you have to kind of get an idea of its levels for that to work for you. Did I miss anything on that? I bring a little dental floss stick. And I think that's about it for that. For water, I tend to bring up 2 liters. I like Deer Park bottles because they're the lightest of the plastic bottles. I'll see a lot of people that use like smart water bottles or other like Nalgene stuff, because they say like, oh, it's strong and it's not going to rupture on you. I guarantee you can throw one of these off a cliff and it's not going to rupture on you. I mean, I literally have dropped one of these off a cliff before and the cap didn't even break. I could probably take a sledgehammer to this and it's not going to break. But if it does, you have another one. So it's not the end of the world. But usually what I do is I have 1 liter that's full of water and one that's empty, unless I know I'm going to be going a long distance without fresh water. And so then I'll fill both. But I try to bring up minimal amounts of water if I know I'm going to be reaching other water sources along the way. And so that helps me save a lot of weight because water is quite heavy. Another thing I started bringing up is electronics. They're just so nice anymore for maps, for emergency, for reading, for taking pictures and so forth. So I bring up a cell phone and I have an app on it that I really like, that I would recommend, is called Guru GPS. So Guru, Guru GPS. What I love about them is they do have a subscription model like the other apps have, but they have a buy once option. You pay like $80 and you own it forever with no subscription. So that I love. And their maps are great. It does offline navigation. It's really nice. And I also started bringing up this guy, is the Nightcore NB10000, I think it is. This is the version 4. This guy only weighs 5 ounces and he's 10,000 milliamp hours. You know, it's carbon fiber. And I'm not sure if you noticed before, but the USB cable is also the little lanyard for it. So it's really nifty for its weight. And for most phones, you're going to get like 2 or 3 charges out of this. And so that's good for most trips for me. And I'll put my phone in airplane mode, maybe even turn it off if I don't need the alarm at night. And so this can keep it charged well through most trips. But if I'm like on a really extended trip, I actually got this little super ultralight solar panel. This is, I think, 10 watts. And this is Lixada, Lixada. Lixada is the brand. You can get these on Amazon. And I'll just like hang this from my backpack, or when I'm at camp, stick it in the sun. And then, I kind of like having it's a long but light USB cable. So I can put the battery in the shade, or have it hang off my pack and have the battery somewhere else. So, but if you want to lose this and just use the little cable that comes with this, just be aware that you have to get an adapter because this is USB-A, and this battery is only USB-C. And so, if you're charging off of solar, and you have a battery, you generally want to go from the solar panel to the battery, and then from the battery to your phone, even if you're just trying to charge your phone. That way you're not, because what will happen if you're using solar and say you have it on your backpack, as you're walking, it's going to lose power, gain power, lose power, gain power, and it's going to cause your cell phone to keep saying it's getting a charge, doesn't have a charge, it has a charge, and it's going to make your screen keep coming off and on, which is going to waste power. So it's better to charge into the battery at least when you're walking. So those are a couple of cool little electronics. Another thing when we're talking about cell phones is, of course, you can put books on it. You can get Kindle and read books on it, which is nice. But if you have a newer phone, it doesn't matter what carrier you use. If it supports Starlink, you can actually pay T-Mobile to have Starlink and make texts from your phone via satellite. And also you can use other apps as well. I think like Grok works on it, which is kind of cool. And WhatsApp works on it and some other things. And so that's really nice, especially for emergencies. That's why I don't bring a Garmin. I just use that. And you can pay by the month. And it's only $10 for a month. So what I'll do is the month I'm going backpacking, I'll pay the $10, get it for just that month, and that's it. You don't have to get into a contract to use it. Another one that hasn't changed for me is the Nightcore Tiki flashlight. This thing is up to 100 lumens. And also, it does, if I can get it here. There we go. This one does a red light. They also have a white version, which instead of the red light does, or blue light, does like a lantern, which is nice if you want to like set it up in your tent and have like a nice lantern effect because of diffusion. You can use that version as well. I have both. I missed a look. If you want to bring a comb, you can break it in half if you want. I don't bring a comb. Just thought I'd show that as an idea. Bear spray is a topic that I like to bring up. If you are in grizzly country, you should always have bear spray. But if you are not in grizzly country, you do not need bear spray. You don't need bear spray. Another thing that I'd recommend is these expire. So find out the expiration date on it. Make sure it hasn't expired. And if you have an expired one, I encourage you, go out to where you have a bunch of open space and try it out. Because you might be surprised how these work. They shoot a cloud out like 30 feet from you. And the idea is that you shoot out a cloud so that if the bear charges you, it runs through that cloud of spray. So it's good to use these to practice, to understand how it works. And just use an expired one. And make sure you're not downwind from it if you can help it. Because you don't want it to spray back on you. That would not be fun. Another splurge item I bring is my Native American flute. You know, this is actually the key of D, I think D4. I actually made this to be ultra lightweight for its size. I made it thin-walled. It looks rather big, but it's pretty light for considering how deep of a key it is. I just really love the deeper key flutes. Moving along. If you need permits and such, I like to put in a little Ziploc bag. Map. My favorite brand of maps is Nat Geo maps, but they're all pretty good. One trick you can do if you don't mind ruining an expensive map is you can just cut out the section of where you're going to save on weight, because these are pretty heavy and a lot of it is usually areas you're not going to. If you're bringing a phone or any other kind of electronic navigation device, you don't even need this. Save some weight there. Maybe you want to bring along a book. One trick you can do with a book is if you don't care too much about the book, as you read it, you can burn the pages. Save a little weight there. Or you can have the book on your phone or other electronic device. Trowel if you need one. I often just use a stick, but they also make some other ultralight offerings, but this one's really light plastic. GSI, I think, is who makes this one, but they have some even smaller ones, ultralight ones. I just find them a little, not too great. This one has a nice firm handle on it, so I like it. Moving along, let's take a look at my stove system. So I have upgraded my stove, and now I use a Modo Windmaster. There's also the MSR Pocket Rocket 2, which is pretty much a wash when it comes to the two of them. I did hear that the Windmaster works a little bit better when it's low on gas, but the Pocket Rocket supposedly is a little more, boils a little bit more quickly. But one thing that I did is I got rid of, on the Windmaster, I got rid of the top that it comes with, and Z-Pack sells an ultralight option that you can buy that has 3 arms to it, and this attaches to the top and has 3 arms, and that'll save you weight on this Modo Windmaster stove. And for my cup, this is a Sea to Summit, not Sea to Summit, Snow Peak titanium. Let me pull it out of here because it's got more things in it. And so this thing, of course, when I'm on camera, it wants to fight me. I like to have a lid for these. Snow Peak sells a lid for theirs, but you can often find them on eBay, like aftermarket ones. Now this is just something that I added. It's like a little cozy, just for keeping it warm a little bit longer when I have my coffee. You can also buy these things here. They're called hot lips. They're like little silicone little things you can put on the lip, just so you, when it's really hot, you don't burn your lip. You can also get a really wide rubber band and do the kind of the same thing, but I think this works better. And then the gas for my stove. This is a 4 ounce, but depending on the length of my trip, I might bring up an 8 ounce. I would recommend that you buy the MSR gas. It's their Isopro, MSR Isopro. This is the best gas there is. Not all gas is created equal. They have different mixes and different qualities, and I will tell you MSR makes the best stuff. And they all cost the same, so just buy MSR. Another thing that I've done is I've gotten this little contraption here called this Suya. That's how you say it. And it's actually this guy right here. Take it off my can. It's this little device here. And what this lets you do is you can transfer gas from one can to another. One thing that I hate is that after a trip, I may not have used up all of my gas, but I don't really know how much is left over. So I'll often find myself with all these old cans stacking up that I'm too afraid to bring with me because I don't know if it's going to have enough left in it or not. So what this does is it allows you to transfer from one tank to another. So what I do is I get a really large tank and I transfer it to the smaller one, and then I know exactly how much I have every trip. And so you can do that if you want. This thing I think I got on Amazon. It was like $20, I think, somewhere around there. But just a kind of a cool idea if you want to try that out. So that's my cup, my stove. So my pot, I used to use an aluminum pot. I accidentally bent it, so I went ahead and got a new one. This is titanium this time. This is by Tokes. It's a 2-liter pot, and it has little handles and a little tab here on the top. I like to bring up a bigger pot because I almost never backpack when I'm alone. I'm usually gonna have friends or family with me. And so this is really nice when you're boiling water for multiple people. You know, a 2-liter pot like this can make water for like 2 or 3 people. So I really enjoy having one of these. And I also do bring a stuff sack just because I will sometimes use these on the fire. This is too new. I've not used it on the fire yet. Where I was at, you couldn't have fires, sadly, where I was at last. But they'll get like soot on them if you use them over the fire. So I like to always make sure it has a stuff sack. And you can put stuff inside of it too to save on space. Usually I will. I took stuff out there out of it for the video though. Also, this is very important. Bring a measuring cup if you are using freeze-dried meals. This is just a plastic measuring cup. And what I did is I actually added my own lines. You're not going to see them on camera, but I added my different lines for like 1/3 cup, 1/4 cup, 1/2 cup, because different meals will call for different levels of water to put in them. So it'll help you measure it out really well. But you're definitely going to need this for preparing those meals. So next is my fishing gear. This is a Hardy Zenith 3-weight rod. Any good 3-weight carbon rod is going to be really lightweight. And then I use a Ross Evolution LT, I think this reel is. It's an ultralight 3-weight reel. I kind of experimented with using mono instead of backing for the reel, and it didn't really save any weight, so I didn't change it out. It still got mono, but regular backing didn't really make a difference. I also like to bring up fly line that's got the extra forward taper, not just your regular weight forward, but this is extra weight forward, because man, I can literally, this is a 3-weight rod, and I no joke can launch this like 80+ feet. I could probably get 100 feet with this line on a little mini 8-foot. This is an 8-foot 3-weight rod. So all those fish that you see out in the center of the lake rising and taunting you, that sucker can reach them. So I love it. Foam fly box. I do bring up a multi-tool. I don't bring up a knife, but this has a knife on it. I mean, I bring up a knife, but it's part of my multi-tool. This has a knife. It has scissors. It has a file. You know, the scissors are really handy for a lot of things to have. And then the coolest thing about it, it's got pliers. Now this specific model is the Leatherman Squirt PS4. Sadly, they discontinued this. If you want to buy it, they're really expensive on eBay. But Gerber makes a kind of a competitor one to it that's similar. That's called the Gerber Dime. That's still in production if you want to look into that. I don't really like bringing up a knife when I just have this one. I find this is more than plenty for my needs. But if I'm in an area where I think I'm going to have to do a lot of like feather sticking because it's really wet, or if I'm going to have to split a lot of wood, I might consider bringing up an actual full-size knife. But that I find to be almost never these days. I just never find I'm in that situation. I bring up an extra leader for fishing, tippet, an extra strike indicator. This thing has seen better days, still works. I bring up a little plastic zinger, you know, so I attach this to my waist, and this has got floating in it, and then this is my nippers. These are Tenkara nippers. They're the lightest weight nippers available. And this is, I'll sometimes bring up cider wax, but this, I only bring this depending on where I'm going. If I'm going to be fishing somewhere where there's some stream fishing or creek fishing, I may bring this. Otherwise, I'm going to leave this behind. This is specifically for like Euro style nymphing. And then I'll bring up my fishing license in a Ziploc. And I think that's almost all of the gear without moving on to the food. And so for food, to start off, you almost, any situation you're in, are going to want to bring some sort of bear sack wherever you're camping, because it's not just bears that you have to worry about. There's also mini bears that are usually worse than bears. So we're talking marmots, squirrels, chipmunks, and so forth. I've seen marmots literally chew through people's tents before to get at food that was inside. And so this is this specific one is the sack, you know, URSACK, sack. This is like a knit bag style bear bag, which you tie to a tree. So if you get one of these, they have a little instructions included on how to tie them. Mine, it comes on a tag. This is the regular size too, but they make bigger sizes if you need more. But man, the regular size, I'm able to fit 7 days worth of food in this. So it works really well. But you tie the top, and it tells you how to tie the knot. And then after you tie it closed, you then tie it to a tree. And if you when you tie it to a tree, make sure you're putting it like 5 feet up, because that's going to give the bear more of a disadvantage at pulling it off the tree than if you have it at ground level. But even if there's not bears, you still want something like this to keep the little guys out of your tent too. I mean, not your tent, your food. Now, a newer style of these came out by another company, and it's called I think the company is called Adotec. Spelled like ADOTEC, I think, Adotec, that makes an even lighter weight version than the sack. I'm not going to go out and buy it because the differences in weight between the two are pretty minimal. But if you're buying one new, check that one out because it's a little bit lighter than this sack is. They also, for the sack, they make an insert for it that I think is aluminum, which adds even more protection. But if some places, I think there's only two now, is Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park and Yosemite, you have to have actual bear canisters. They won't allow these, which is really dumb if you ask me, but if you do that, you actually have to get a bear canister. But let's move on to food. So I really like freeze-dried meals, and I always like to recommend to people that if you can, try it at home first, just to see if you like it. Now, I've made a few minor changes to my food system over the last few years, but not a lot. One of the biggest changes that I made is I stopped bringing up like hot chocolate and cider, powdered heavy drinks, because they would, like on a 7-day trip, it would add up to a lot of weight. And so what I just started doing is bringing up tea for just extra drink. I bring up tea, and then I also bring up a couple packets of Emergency. Now, some people get kind of really concerned with electrolytes, but the reality is if unless maybe you're a vegan, eating a lot of vegan meals, most of this stuff is going to have a lot of salt in it. So you're getting most of the electrolytes that you need just from your food. Even if you're a vegan, a lot of it might be salty. I said what I did because I know a lot of the meals I found don't have a lot of salt. But the meaty stuff generally does. So I find like a couple packets of Emergency is probably enough to keep your electrolytes up, even on like a long, extended, week-long trip. And so there's that. Now, the most important drink of all, as we all know, is coffee. And man, I left it in the other room. But one coffee that is really popular, that you'll see a lot of these days, is called Verve. It's pretty good. Now, I tried several different instant coffees. I've been using the Starbucks Vias for a long time, but I tried a lot of other brands and like compared them. And Verve is one that you hear of a lot. But I actually found one that I feel is even better. It's called Mount Hagen. Mount Hagen. I think it's spelled like Hagen. Mount Hagen. And they sell it at like Target and Walmart and other supermarkets, and it just comes in a glass jar. It is super nice. I like it way more than the Verve. And I like it so much that I use it at home. Like if I want a coffee like right now, I just go in and make myself a Mount Hagen, put in a scoop of it with some hot water, and it is nice. And they even make like refill pouches for it. So it's a lot cheaper. I want to say the Verve is like $2 a cup. It's ridiculously expensive. Meanwhile, Mount Hagen, you can get it in a jar or the big pouch, and you're going to get like hundreds of glasses of coffee out of it. So I can't recommend that stuff enough. Another drink that I'll often bring, I can find where I put it here, is, here it is. Country Time lemonade. Hey, it's good stuff. But I'll usually put it in like a Ziploc bag. This is way more than I'd normally bring. Maybe half that amount or less. But one thing I love to do with this stuff is if I find snow, which you usually will if you're in the mountains, even in summertime, because you'll run across a little patch of it, is I'll make like a little slushy where I'll put in snow and mix in like some Country Time lemonade or maybe even some Emergency or whatever other powdered drink you might have. It's really good, and you just eat it with a spoon out of your cup, which is really nice. Another drink I will sometimes bring is wine. Now this is a little platypus pouch. It's for like preserving wine in so it stays fresher. I don't bring this on every trip. It just depends on where I'm going and how much I feel like carrying. But sometimes it's nice to have a little splurge wine item. And then for breakfast, I don't have any made up currently. But what I like to use is, I brought it here to show you the can. It's called Peak. This is a really, really nice powdered milk. And what I like to do is I make little breakfast bags. So I'll take a Ziploc bag and I'll stick the correct proportions of powdered milk into the bag along with whatever cereal. For me, it's usually going to be different granolas. Like I kind of mix it up so I have a little bit of variety. And then I will add in different varieties into the pouch of like freeze-dried fruit. So like I'll have one type of granola with, strawberry, and then I'll put that in my cup and eat it, out of my cup with my spoon. And it's a really enjoyable breakfast. I used to bring up instant oatmeal, but man, I don't really like instant oatmeal. I love regular oatmeal, but the problem is it takes too long to cook if you're cooking off of a stove. But if you're going to be able to have a fire, you could consider bringing up like steel cut oats or cream of wheat or whatever else. But I really like eating the cereal. Another nice thing you can do is you can take, I haven't looked where you can find it, but I have a friend who has a freeze dryer. But if you can get freeze dried egg and you just turn it into a powder, like you can even, if you make your own, you freeze dry the raw egg and then you put it in a blender and turn it into a powder. Then you bring that powder with you and then you add water to the powder when you're ready to make it, and you literally fry it in a pan, and you have like what tastes exactly like normal scrambled eggs. It's really good. You could even like do it in your pot if you didn't have a pan. Another thing is I don't bring up a lunch. What I bring up is like snack items. So I'll often bring up like a bag of cashews, like a Ziploc bag full of cashews. And then I'll bring up, these are my favorite thing that I found, are these Stinger stroopwafels. They make them in various flavors, but generally what I found is I just don't like energy bars. I don't know what it is about them. Like, I don't know if it's the proteins they put in or whatnot, but I know like the other problem with energy bars is when they put protein in, let's back up a little bit. A good weight you're looking for when you're looking at bars and things is you want it to be like 130 grams per ounce or more, 130 calories per ounce or more. And the problem is the protein maxes out at 118 calories per ounce. And so I think carbohydrates maxes at like 150. The only way to get higher is from like oils and butter and stuff. But these right here, the honey ones, 150 calories per ounce. And then like the other flavors, like this is their caramel. Most of the other flavors besides the honey are 140 calories per ounce. But another cool option, if you're interested, that I like is the Walker's shortbread cookies. They sell these at a lot of supermarkets. I even think they sell it at Walmart or maybe Target. But they're basically just little plain and simple shortbread cookies. And these are 150 calories per ounce. You'll see something kind of similar in some MREs, if you have like a military MRE, but they're not as good as these. And I believe the reason why these are such good when it comes to calories per ounce is because they have butter, a lot of butter in them. Butter is very good for calories. But yeah, I used to bring up Snicker bars, but Snickers, they melt so easily. It's hard to keep them from melting. But I think what's important when it comes to me personally with my like midday food, my midday snacks, is I kind of get into like this groove sometimes where I just want to go and go and go, and I don't feel that hungry, even though I really need to be eating. And if I have like a energy bar, I don't like them. They don't taste that great. And I'll often find that I just don't eat all of them. But these I can eat at any time, and they're really, really tasty. And I really enjoy them a lot. And so those are my favorite like lunch item snacks. And of course I mentioned you could bring nuts. I would recommend you bring the nuts that you love the most. Like, don't just bring up the gorp, the good old raisins and peanuts. If you don't like it, bring up stuff that you love, that you want to eat. If your favorite nut in the world is a pistachio nut, bring up a whole bunch of shelled pistachios. Why not? It's just going to help you enjoy your trip more. So another thing I bring up, I bring with me, I kind of showed a couple of these, and I'll bring up more than these, but in fact, I'm not bringing up, like, this doesn't represent all the food that I'll bring on any given trip, because that kind of depends on the duration of the trip and so forth. But I just grabbed a few items just to kind of show you the types of stuff I like. So I'll often bring up a few different types of freeze-dried fruits to just snack on. You know, be it strawberries, bananas, mangoes, raspberries, whatever you like. And I'll snack on those as well. And then for dinner meals, I really like the Peak Refuel. So that's a breakfast and that's a dinner package. And these are a little bit more of a premium brand. They're not like the highest up there. Like I think it's called like Pinnacle, and some other companies make some even higher, more like premium ones that are more expensive. But I really love these. I think they're in a nice spot where I can get these on sale usually. I can find them for like $10 to $12. And what I like to do is I'll periodically check on various sites online, and when I see them go on sale, I'll buy like a year or two's supply worth. So like I have a huge box just filled with these. So a few of these that I really like from the Peak is the chicken coconut curry. Absolutely love it. Biscuit, sausage, and gravy is pretty good. My favorite is, well, actually the curry and this are probably a tie. This is the beef pasta marinara. So good. And then the chicken Alfredo pasta. Really, really good. And I like to usually bring up a few desserts. I just love to have sometimes a little extra calories, especially since I didn't eat like a big lunch usually. I love their peach cobbler. Strawberry cheesecake. I'm out of it and I need to get some, but I'll often bring up the freeze-dried ice cream. That stuff's so light. And this is probably my favorite dessert I've ever found for backpacking. Is Backpacker's Pantry creme brulee. Oh, it's so good. I want to eat it right now. Oh, it's so good. Creme brulee. I bought a whole box of it. But when it comes to freeze-dried food, in fact, when it comes to backpacking food in general, you know, I've talked to a lot of people on the trail who either bring up a ton of extra weight. I know people that bring up like 20 pounds of food because that's so important to them to have really good food. Meanwhile, I talk to a lot of people who have a really crummy eating experience when they backpack because they're not really bringing up very good food. That's kind of both sides of the spectrum. I really think it's important to eat well when you backpack because it's a big morale booster. Especially if you've had a really bad or tiring day. It's really nice to, one, have that good meal to look forward to, but two, to really boost your morale when you eat it. That's also why I love to bring the desserts. And so having a really good meal that's not going to let you down, it's really important. It's worth the extra weight, even if it weighs a little bit more. But I do think that's within reason. Some people are kind of shy away from freeze-dried stuff. And maybe they even had a bad experience with freeze-dried things in the past. But the reality is that it depends on what you're eating and what brand it is. Or if you're making it yourself, you have like a freeze dryer or a friend that has it. You know, different things are better than others when it comes to freeze drying. You know, everybody loves their bacon and eggs, but you know, or let's say you love your steak in the evening. Well, yeah, it's true. You can't have a steak when you go backpacking. I mean, most of us aren't going to lug one around, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to eat well. You just need to find the things that reheat really well or that rehydrate really well. And it's not, yeah, you may not get your steak, but you're going to get something else that's really good. So just because some things don't taste very well when they rehydrate, other things do. So find things that you really enjoy. I found that over the years, back before when say I'd be backpacking for a week, years back, and I'd be on my last day, I'd just be thinking the whole day, like, oh man, where am I gonna eat once we get, to civilization, and what burger am I gonna have, and I'd be just drooling over that all day. But nowadays, man, I don't even think about it. I like get back and it's like, yeah, whatever, because I enjoy these so much. And so another thing that I do now that I didn't used to do is I'll actually bring, I didn't grab multiples, but I'll bring like the same thing for multiple nights even. Because I was thinking to myself one day, as I pull out like this, it was like a beef stew or something, and it's like, yeah, it's pretty good, but it's not my favorite. And so I'd be like, what day am I going to eat the beef stew on? Maybe the day that wasn't as grueling, or that I'm not as hungry, I don't know. But it was always like, felt like I was like making a compromise. Well, why? Why don't I bring it meals that every single night I absolutely love what I'm eating? And so what I like to do is I like to bring up one meal for every night, and then I'll bring up like 2 to 4 desserts, depending on how long I'm going, and how much I really feel like bringing. I don't bring a dessert for every night. And then I'll bring up one extra meal. That's for like emergency, or sometimes what I'll do is for that extra meal, that's where I'll maybe do a little experimenting. I like to try to experiment at home, but let's face it, these are kind of expensive. They're like 10 to 15 bucks a meal sometimes. And so I'll maybe bring one I haven't had before. And on the trip, if there's a night where I feel like trying it, then maybe I'll try it. And that's kind of how I like to expose myself to new things I haven't tried before without breaking the bank to try all this stuff at home. But yeah, I think that is everything. I do not think I missed anything. So hopefully that helps give you some ideas of a lot of the gear out there. If you have any questions, or if I might have missed something, I'll try to leave it down in the comments. But happy backpacking and happy trails.